Western Australia-based biotech company PYC Therapeutics has commenced a new clinical study in a bid to help patients with a blinding eye disease. Joining me now is CEO Rohan Hockings. Rohan, thanks so much for your time. Tell us what you're doing here.
Thanks very much for having me. So we have taken the first drug for a group of patients who've got a blinding eye disease of childhood. There are tens of thousands of them around the world, and we are trying to make a drug that addresses the underlying cause of this disease and prevents the blindness from happening in these patients. And so today's announcement relates to our progression from an early stage study, a single dose study. We're now moving into a multiple dose study in these patients. With the exciting part being that we're going to build on the human safety data that we've already announced and now look to see the human efficacy data through the second half of this year.
How rare is this disease, Rohan? And I guess just tell us a little bit about the participants in this study.
Yeah, it affects 1 in every 100,000 people. So it's at the more prevalent end of the rare disease spectrum. And the typical disease course for the patients is that they notice around the age of 6 years old that they lose their vision in low luminance settings, so at nighttime or when it's dark. And from there, through the teenage years, they'll lose their peripheral vision. And then in their 30s and 40s, they'll lose their central vision as well, and they'll be declared legally blind. So we are progressing a drug that aims to stop that process from happening completely, because it's actually addressing the underlying cause of the disease. We've dosed 12 patients in the single dose study already to date and are monitoring those patients for safety and efficacy. And now we will move to dose another 6 patients in this multiple dose study and monitor them for safety and efficacy before launching what we call a registrational or late stage study in the second quarter of next year.
So that's what happens in 2025. What sort of step after that, Rohan? Hopefully, if this all goes to plan, I guess FDA approval would be on your bucket list.
Exactly. It's all directed towards that. So a new drug application. We're currently planning for a 24-month registrational study, which would put us into 2027 for that NDA. Although the very interesting thing that's happening at the minute is the FDA is showing a lot more flexibility in relation to these drugs that address the underlying causes of these rare diseases in terms of accelerating the approval pathway for those drugs. And this particular drug program that we're talking about has already got what we call fast track designation from the US FDA. So we need to have a conversation with the regulator to understand exactly what that journey looks like and see whether, if we can repeat what has been observed in one patient already to date, which is that we've actually improved their visual function. If that happens again and again and again, can we actually plot a faster path to that new drug application than the currently planned 2027?
Rohan, we've spoken before about your work with Phelan-McDermid syndrome as well. Just tell us what else you've got on the books at PYC Therapeutics. What else is happening?
Yeah, it's a huge ambition. I've just had a look at the plan for the evolution. This year, we're currently running 4 clinical trials concurrently, and that could scale to up to 12 next year. So the program that we're talking about, the first blinding eye disease, retinitis pigmentosa, is the most advanced, the one that's just moved into the multiple dose study. We're expecting imminently, any point in the next couple of weeks, to get the regulatory approval for a second drug for a blinding eye disease to move into human studies. We have a third drug that is ahead of the queue in terms of the Phelan-McDermid program for polycystic kidney disease, a very prevalent rare disease affecting 1 in every 1,000 people. And then Phelan-McDermid syndrome program is currently scheduled to be into the clinic at the tail end of next year.
So how are you going in terms of, I guess, cash to fund all of this R&D?
We completed a $75 million raise earlier this year, so we're actually in a nice position there. We've got a runway that is of the order of around $100 million. And so we've got a lot of milestones between now and the end of that cash runway that should fundamentally change the market's view of the valuation of what we've got.
And in terms of that valuation, I mean, sitting around 12 cents, I assume you believe that it should be higher. I know you can't control the market, but what do you think is fair value for PYC Therapeutics?
Oh, look, if you look at our peers in the US who are RNA drugs for rare disease, so a genuine apples for apples in early clinical stage development with safety and initial efficacy data, you're looking at a market cap of between 10 and 20 times what PYC trades at. So we're talking about Avidity Biosciences, Dyne Therapeutics, Stoke Therapeutics, those guys. There's a lot of upside here in the event that we can transition to a definitive efficacy signal. Each one of these markets is worth between $1 and $10 billion per annum, and they're ultra high margin drugs in the rare disease space. So there's a huge amount of upside in the event that the company continues to deliver over the course of the next 6 and 12 months.